Brain Factor, where we interview millennial entrepreneurs, commentators, scientists, and everything in between. Millennials making a difference in their industry, here to inspire and educate. With us today, we have Dhruv Ghulati, the co-founder and CEO of Factmata, a company that aims to tackle misinformation using artificial intelligence and communities. Dhruv has also been recognized on Forbes 30 Under 30 in the category of technology. We're very excited to have Dhruv with us today. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I just landed in Oaxaca, so
You're living the life.
had a good time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thanks so much for agreeing to be interviewed. I want to talk a little bit about the company you co-founded, Factmata. So currently, in a recent study, 90% of tech policy experts agreed that tackling misinformation, fake news, whatever you want to call it, should be a global priority. So is that where the idea of Factmata was born?
So it was more of a technical problem that I was interested in solving, which is kind of like I wanted to hold politicians to account, and there was a political nature of what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and the timing also, Factmata being founded.
Yeah, so it was 2015. So kind of I guess like before the kind of Trump election happened, and I just thought this was be needed. And I think the other aspect of maybe the inspiration came from I'd been working in big data, before then for the last like 3 years before that. Kind of a lot of the focus in big data, probably like pre 2014, was around gathering as much data as possible and storing as much data as possible, and it's about the volume of how much we could store. That's why you had technologies like Hadoop, for example, that came in, and Hive and Pig and so on, that was all about like scale. But then no one was really focusing, I thought, on the quality of what was actually being stored. If you were having a trading system on automatically trading on tweets and technology influencers, and what they were saying was effectively just like front running certain types of issues or whatever, or trying to promote certain stocks versus others, you would just have a completely incorrect system.
And Factmata is using artificial intelligence to deal with and detect rather abusive content and hate speech. And I mean, artificial intelligence in doing that is not new. So I just want to understand, like, Factmata using AI to detect hate speech and misinformation, how are those policies reviewed, and how exactly is it different from what you had envisioned originally when you were just doing your thesis on a theoretical level, as opposed to practically running a company that does that?
If you were to like build a system to like validate information, the hardest thing you can do is to do what I was doing in my thesis, which is like find these claims and then find like a real-time database to check the claim. What's the update frequency of these like databases that you check the claims from? Are there certain domains and subjects where like you don't have enough facts to like check the claims? It's a massive problem, not just of building the algorithm, but actually knowing what's like truthful in a given subject that's changing all the time.
And I'm just thinking, like, how much volume are you guys going through daily? And is there like a review process? Like, do you have analysts that are looking through this stuff? Because I mean, this stuff takes work,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think one of the things that we probably underestimated was like how difficult it would be. And there are teams of fact checkers that kind of sit. Claims tend to be repeated often. So a given claim might be repeated on the internet in a similar semantic style. People are basically saying the same thing, but like maybe not the exact same words. So, one problem to solve is around just like claim clustering. Yes. Like finding a claim and then seeing where it's been propagated through the internet. And then when you check that claim, making sure that the fact check is assigned to all of the different claims in the world, right?
It's interesting actually, because, disinformation is powerful, in a negative way, of course. I mean, it can catalyze insurrections, as we've seen, like, and exacerbate pandemics. What do you think of Instagram's new feature, and I know a couple other websites as well have it, where it kind of sends you to an official government website or an official source? Do you see that kind of being the future of fact checking, or is that not as productive or workable in the long run?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an issue. Typically, people don't work like that. People don't want to be told like a single source of truth. People want to be given like relevant context that's like the right amount of range of different opinions, so it's not confusing. but it also basically allows you to make your own mind up. And Wikipedia does this actually quite well, where you sort of can look at a given topic in Wikipedia on the
It
mobile.
has the footnotes. Yeah.
See the context,
Yeah.
and it can be like, okay, well, this relates to this other subject,
Yes.
or and that doesn't really exist in terms of news navigation very much, like in context. And that's one of the things I was really interested in building out. Is like how do we have like an easy way of basically understanding the world around us and like understanding what's truthful and what's not.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Dhruv, the game has completely changed in the last few years as well, because sometimes see some elected political leaders in whatever positions claiming those things, and those people have a huge following, and this makes it crazier and more scary. So how does that change the way we tackle disinformation in the future going forward? If some of our elected officials, the most powerful people in our communities, are supporting claims that are biased and simply false.
People's critical thinking power has like slowly been eroded. You're given everything on a plate. There's like maybe 5 or 6 publications that people flock to that give them all their information. The sources of where you get your information is incredibly clustered and incredibly dense.
I mean, I read the New York Times has now, and CNN also has now gotten like a full-time fact checker team, and they understand the responsibility that they have to put stuff out to the people that is fact checked. They didn't always used to do that. So I think especially given the, in recent years, it's become very much their responsibility as well.
No, absolutely. And the thing is, in terms of like, responsibility, the scary thing about politicians being the drivers of like our information sources is they have a hidden incentive. Everything that they're saying is getting you to kind of like vote for a specific policy or drive a certain
outcome,
drive them into power.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've also learned in this, working on this problem, is like really understanding the incentives of each person in the information ecosystem. Most publications that are major, right, are either government backed or they have some kind of like agenda. And often, they will take a view on a certain, let's say, politician or a certain party that they actually write this publicly, right? So they'll say at the beginning of a campaign, like, we're supporting this candidate and we believe in their views and this is why. But that means that all of their reporting henceforth is trying to promote that party. So I think for me, at least, like, my information diet is I'm trying to find the most niche sources. I'm trying to find the experts. I'm trying to find the bloggers that really understand their subject.
Is that the biggest challenge, you'd say, that you're facing? Just finding those experts and doing it the right way?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because like, again, a lot of that content is like not being funded very well. Like how do you fund a new website or a new blog? I think that content's going to come from individuals in the future, right?
Yeah.
Bloggers, people who have knowledge about a subject. I'm a bit worried about kind of like just getting your news from, I don't know, the Guardian or the New York Times, because like it's like the same thing about Web3, right? Where centralization of information.
And that's
kind of scary, because like if BBC changes its viewpoint one time, or I don't know, the Guardian has a new editor, it's just like you're kind of beholden to that.
They define the narrative the
way that
sometimes suits them. I want to talk a little about fundraising, because Dhruv, I think you have one of the most impressive rap sheets out of most entrepreneurs that I've interviewed. I mean, you've raised money from Mark Cuban, you've raised money from Zynga founder Mark Pincus. How did you get on their radar? Most entrepreneurs find it very challenging to raise money from big sharks, as we call them, so early on. So what's your secret?
I believe in cold emailing, and I'm constantly sort of like, I've been building my network for the last like 4 or 5 years as a religion of mine. I just kind of every day reach out to 3 or 4 people that I find interesting, and it really has exponential effects. That's the amazing thing about having a network. Is really just like, it just gets better and better in terms of like just getting introductions to people. I think at the beginning of when I was founding the company, like, obviously didn't have a network at all. But I think I had a proposition that was kind of pretty unique at that time and pretty out there in terms of like really having a seriously ambitious plan to take on some quite big problems in the media ecosystem. And at that time, there really weren't many companies that were doing this, and the timing was incredible in terms of kind of what was happening in the world. So I think I had a good story out there to kind of put out there.
I want to finish with talking a little bit about Cofounders. I understand there's 4 of you. So there's you, then there's 2 professors from Sheffield and UCL, and then there's one of the early founders of Wikipedia. Is that right? And how did you find them, choose them? What makes a good co-founder? What's your advice to new entrepreneurs watching?
Yeah, so I had an odd one, because the 2 professors, I actually really wanted them to be sort of like really in the thick of the company. Obviously, they had academic obligations at that point, so they wanted to kind of being professors and publishing papers and so on. So they were more involved as like scientific advisors. Robert, who came on board, who's the Wikipedia kind of like early engineer, he actually reached out on AngelList. AngelList is a great platform and still is for like finding like people in startups looking for work. I think LinkedIn is probably a channel, again, I would be using right now to find co-founders. I think the best way of just building a team, early team, is to just list the people who'd be the perfect people to build this company with you, and try and like reach out to probably 100 of them and see and try and build these relationships and kind of see who's willing to come on board. And often, you can bring someone on board and you can, but it's about actually building stuff together.
Is it difficult sometimes, I guess, like deciding on the next steps of the company when you have another 3 co-founders? Are there like maybe some differing ideas, conflict?
Yeah, it's a really good question. One thing that I've noticed and like my experience is like people founding a company, making sure that essentially their personal and individual and like just generate goals for like what they want to get out of the startup experience should be like very implicit and clear. If I know that, for example, one of my co-founders, is a professor, I know that they're there and they really care about, the
truth and getting to the bottom.
They have this kind of noble mission around the truth. I know that like if we make certain commercial decisions, that wouldn't sit well with our co-founders. Let's say we're going down the government space, or we were helping a politician to, with our tool or something.
And that's what I have for today. I know you're a busy man, and so I don't want to keep you any longer, but I just want to thank you, frankly, for agreeing to do this and for sharing your knowledge about this information and about building a startup with us today.
Thanks a lot.
It's that new age, ain't it something special? Yeah, we gon' change the game.